The anime begins by showing us the death of our protagonist's mother. In the next scene, we move to December 1989 to the Sora Mamayam house, where a couple approaches an orphanage. And as soon as they knock on the door, they are surrounded by a group of children, and the wife of the couple suggests they adopt them all. But her husband doesn't think it's the right thing to do because he is already of an advanced age. And after spending their day with the kids, they decide to return the next day to try and select whom to adopt. However, before leaving, due to an unforeseen event, they meet Dali, whom they promise to return for tomorrow. The scene changes, and the couple talks about Dali's appearance because he is very beautiful. And suddenly, while they were preparing to leave, a rainstorm stopped them, and they met Migi, who was protecting a dog. In the next scene, we move to February 1990, where the same couple is happy to finally be parents. They then head to the door to receive their son, with whom they plan a happy family. Upon opening the door, they find Dali, who is very surprised by the size of his room when he is taken to it. He tells his new parents that he loves how they decorated the place with a star theme, and then the couple proceeds to finish unpacking their son's things. But suddenly, the young man's father notices a very large box, and when he tries to open it, his son stops him, asking for permission to finish decorating his room by himself. Hearing this, they tell him they will gladly let him decorate his room, and then they call him Hitori. After their departure, the young man prepares to unpack the mysterious box from which his twin brother tells him it's time to tidy up. And next, the boys quickly begin to decorate the room. But suddenly, their father interrupts them to inform Hitori that the dinner prepared by his mother is almost ready. The scene changes, and we hear Hitori confessing to his parents that he has never eaten anything so delicious. His mother is very happy to hear this and then asks him what he thought of the new clothes they left in his room. Hitori tells them that everything was too small for him, and for that reason, his parents tell him they will buy him more. But first, they want to know what type of clothes he likes. Hitori tells them he needs 2 outfits just like the one he is wearing. His parents get flustered hearing this and recommend he not be so reserved. Hitori tells them that's not it, he just wants similar clothes because they suit him best. And then, while his mother was asking if he would be turning 13 this year, Hitori signals to his brother that it's time to slip under the table. Subsequently, seeing his mother sad because they are not going to finish the jambalaya she prepared, he decides to ask for another plate. She gets overly excited to hear this, and Hitori, for his part, takes advantage of the moment of distraction to switch places with Migi. So after he starts eating, his parents are surprised by the amount of food Hitori ate. Later, we observe Hitori's father asking him for a massage, and since he doesn't know what his father means, his father offers to teach him. After a while, the man of the house confesses to Hitori that he always dreamed of his son giving him a massage. Hearing this, he says that he also always dreamed of being able to do something like that, which makes his father happy, so he tells him to continue with the massages. Upon hearing this, the boys work as a team to fulfill his requests. His father, not noticing what is happening, confesses that he might have a hidden talent for giving massages. At night, we see Migi say that the first day was a success, to which Dali tells him not to let his guard down. Subsequently, without realizing it, they spent the whole night drawing a map of their new house. The next day, the boys came down for breakfast with their parents, who asked him if he slept well. After hearing his answer, they ask him to stop being so formal, as he is their son now. He replies that he will be more careful, which doesn't convince his parents, who then talk about how Hitori still hasn't gotten used to living with them, and for that reason, they regret that they can't yet give him beautiful childhood memories. However, they begin to reveal their dreams and plans to give their son that beautiful childhood. The one listening attentively, hidden behind a wall, smiles knowing that everything is going well, and subsequently heads to his room in search of a book from which he can learn to make a pie. Hitori, after finding the right book, approaches his mother to hint that he would like to try cherry pie. Hearing this, she gets excited and offers to bake a pie with him. Hitori thinks this is a good idea. During the preparation, Migi and Dali work hard as a team to make their mother very happy. But while cooking, his mother gets desperate for not being good at assembling the top part of the pie. The boys, taking advantage of the fact that she had to leave for a moment, decide to finish the pie on their own. His mother, upon returning, is amazed to see how Hitori was able to finish the pie by himself. And for that reason, after placing the pie in the oven, she confesses that she always dreamed of making this meal with her son Hitori. Hearing her, he tells her he had a lot of fun with her. And while this happens, Dali notices that his father has arrived. He sees how his father gets very sad upon hearing Migi, and so he comes up with an idea to change his mood. The scene changes, and we observe Dali trying to place a birdhouse on a tree that he can't reach. So his father, a little embarrassed, offers to lift him on his back so he can reach the desired height. After a great effort, his father hopes this will be a good memory for his son. However, we then see how sore he is from the physical exertion. Hitori apologizes for being too heavy and hurting him, to which he replies that this happened because his father is a weakling. And then, as night falls, Dali thinks his father is a fragile old man. So Migi, who thinks the same, worries that if their father can't lift them, their plan can't move forward. For that reason, the boys devise a new strategy to make the work easier for their father. The next day, we see that thanks to the boys' ingenuity, they were able to fulfill their father's dream, which made him very happy. But since the boys don't want to be discovered, upon their father's insistence to see how the house turned out, Hitori decides to pretend he is afraid of heights and then thanks him for what he did, causing him to cry with happiness. The scene changes, and the boys are happy that everything is going as planned because the elderly couple loves them. Finally, we go back to the past, where we see how Migi and Dali planned everything to be adopted by the elderly couple. And next, we find ourselves in the year 1983 in the village of Oregon in the northern district called Couve. There, we see Migi and Dali with their dirty hands looking at the city after having buried their mother. The scene changes and we move to the present, where Hitori's parents plan to talk about something while he bathes. Meanwhile, the boys talk about how they must live as one. Migi tells his brother that perhaps the elderly couple is tougher to crack than they expected, because, given the way they wash their bodies during their bath, they must be very resilient. Dali, for his part, while they are bathing, says that perhaps as years accumulate, skin might accumulate as well. The boys then try to figure out how the different elements of the bathroom work until they are interrupted by their mother. She enters the bathroom, which embarrasses Hitori a bit, who quickly gets into the bathtub. His mother, upon seeing him, is happy that he liked how she prepared the water for him. However, before leaving, she noticed that there were 2 sets of clothes in the place, but she still didn't suspect anything strange. On the other hand, Dali worries upon realizing they were almost discovered. Later, we see Dali laughing at his brother for wearing pajamas, to which he replies that tomorrow it will be his turn. Next, we see Hitori ask his mother why he has to wear pajamas when he never wore them at the orphanage. She tells him he should wear them to help him feel at home, as they have become a family since his arrival. She then compliments his hair, to which he says he hates it, because at the orphanage they told him his hair was weird. But she replies that being different is a wonderful thing. And she also assures him that if his hair is weird, hers is mega weird. The scene changes, and Dali confesses to his brother that when he spent moments with his mother, he felt like they were a real family. Migi, hearing this, asks him not to say such strange things, as he is only doing it to build a foundation from which to investigate the village. Suddenly, they are interrupted by their parents, who inform them that they have to go out for a while. Hitori asks if he can accompany them, but they tell him it's better to stay home with the dog named Sardine. After they leave, Dali tells his brother that the parents' attitude was somewhat suspicious, so they decide to investigate their parents' room, where they find a piece of his mother's clothing under the bed. Migi, not understanding what it's for, begins to run tests to discover its purpose. For his part, Dali tells him to keep investigating another room in the house, his father's study. There, they discover the old man's personal diary, in which he writes his dreams to share with his son. But after reading the diary, the boys think their father is a bit naive and weak. Finally, after finishing their investigation, Migi begins to think that maybe the elderly couple has nothing to hide. However, they suddenly find a photograph in which their father appears with another woman who is not his current mother. They both conclude that it's possible the old man has a secret with that person. They then head to the last room on the 2nd floor, where they discover a clothing storage room. At the back, they find a shelf with human hair, which scares the boys. Migi, upon seeing it, wonders if this has anything to do with the old woman stroking his hair so much. Suddenly, Sardine approaches them and tries to take Migi away, to which Dali tells him to leave him alone. Then they realize that Sardine possibly wanted to warn them that the elderly couple had already returned. The brothers, spying on their parents, discover that they are hiding something, so they quickly go down from the 2nd floor and follow them to a shed in the garden. There they hear the parents talking about preventing Hitori from finding out they are planning a welcome party. The boys hear the whole plan, which will start at 3 o'clock, and it's mentioned that he will have to be blindfolded. The scene changes, and the boys are worried that the next day their parents will want to cut their hair with a machine they are hiding. Dali believes the party is just an excuse to do that, which he finds to be in bad taste. His brother tells him that if they only wanted them for their hair, they won't stand by idly, to which Dali replies that they will give them what they deserve. The next day, Hitori's father tells him that the welcome party will start soon. While his parents are choosing what to wear, Hitori suggests they both wear black. He explains that this way they can all match, and his parents think it's a good idea. Meanwhile, Migi makes preparations for his little plan, in retaliation for being deceived. During the party, Hitori's parents introduce him to all the guests. Meanwhile, Dali tells his brother that he is counting on him to execute the plan. Next, Hitori is introduced to the Ichijo family, who are very kind to him. On the other hand, Migi prepares to make his move until they are interrupted by Tsutsumi and his young son, Maruta. They suggest to Hitori's mother that if they haven't found a school yet, they could join the scouts. Maruta talks about how great they are and then makes fun of Dali's hair, although no one notices. Suddenly, Akiyama appears and gives Hitori some sweets that his father sent him. Meanwhile, Hitori's mother chats with her friends about how fast the adoption process was. Finally, Dali tells Migi that it's time to set the plan in motion. So, Migi throws hot sauce into his mother's wine glass, who is surprised when she drinks it. Hitori, pretending to want to help, gives her glasses of water that actually contain another strong drink. Then, while his mother is distracted talking with other guests, Hitori takes his father to another place. In the next scene, we discover that Dali actually took his father away to put olive oil in his hair without his knowledge. For this reason, Migi believes they are now ready to burn them when they try to shave their heads at 3 in the afternoon, since alcohol and grease, which are highly flammable, will allow them to set them on fire naturally using a magnifying glass. But Dali, upon hearing his brother's plan, asks him who will act as the decoy. And upon hearing this, Migi begs him to let him be the decoy because he wants to see up close how the masks of their imposters fall. So Dali, trusting in his brother's determination, promises that he will make sure the sun does its job. But suddenly, he crosses paths with Eiji and the Ichijo family, who claim to have gotten lost looking for the bathroom. However, after crossing their paths, Eiji tells Dali that he has very beautiful hair, which he thinks is unpleasant. Finally, the appointed time has arrived, and so the protagonist's mother asks him to take a seat. But as the boys were preparing to carry out their plan, Dali realizes they had made a mistake, so he tries to signal to his brother to cancel the plan. His brother, on the other hand, is only thinking about burning their parents' masks, and suddenly hears his mother asking Migi to take off the blindfold. Hearing her, he worries as he notices they are not yet on fire. He starts to get nervous, thinking the plan has failed, and then he hears his mother insisting that he take off the blindfold. Subsequently, annoyed by the situation, he still complies with his mother's request. But when he looks up, he sees that his parents have given him a bicycle as a thank you for coming to their home. Hitori, not knowing how to react, suddenly, because his brother burned his back, pretends to be very excited. At night, Dali asks Migi not to be angry for burning him just a little, as he was petrified and unable to act. He then tells him that it seems it really was a party for Hitori, and that his mother was indeed the one in the photo with his father. But not only that, as he is also surprised that his mother's hair was just artificial hair, and for that very reason, he tells his brother that there are still many things they don't know. Migi accepts this and then confesses that he had no idea a family was like this. Finally, Dali, very determined, takes his brother's hand and tells him it's time for them to go see their real mother. In the next scene, we see how 7 years ago the boys lived with their mother in Oregon, but one night they woke up and couldn't find her by their side. After searching for her, they found her lifeless in the village. And upon arriving at her grave, Dali tells Migi that at that moment they didn't understand. However, now they know that someone from Oregon killed their mother, and that's why they allowed themselves to be adopted to find the culprit. Migi, hearing this, assures him that he knows the plan, and they then remind each other that they are going to kill their mother's murderer. In the next scene, Migi and Dali tell us that their oldest memory is of being under a bed, and how they then painted on the wallpaper, imagining it was a labyrinth, as they had been living in, hiding with their mother in a room of some house for a long time. But in December 1982, they left that place, and there their mother showed them why she adored Oregon so much. However, this town killed her, and for that reason, the boys had to bury their mother themselves. So, in the present, they both wished to take revenge on the town of Oregon. And next, we observe Hitori's parents asking him if he will join the Boy Scouts. Surprised by the question, he asks if they want him to leave because it bothers them that he stays at home. His parents, worried by what he said, assure him that it doesn't bother them and that he can stay forever if he wishes. At night, Migi and Dali worry because they were almost thrown into the lion's den, as they are two people pretending to be one and have no time for nonsense because they must find their mother's killer. Migi tells his brother that the first thing they must locate is the room with the paisley wallpaper to find clues. Therefore, Dali suggests investigating all the houses in the town, to which his brother asks how they will get inside them. Dali says they will enter carefully through the windows, although he also thinks that to make their job easier, they need friends. So we later see that they both decided to join the Boy Scouts so that their friends would invite them to their houses. However, after enrolling in the group, Migi asks Dali how to make friends. Dali replies that luckily there are many boys, and then they throw themselves at them to find out how to make friends. The scene changes, and we observe Dali trying to integrate into a group of boys talking about their lives. But he doesn't get the expected results. For this reason, Migi decides to approach Maruta to try to be his friend. Meanwhile, the rest of the boys discover Hitori's desperation to make friends. They believe that no one wants to be friends with someone from an orphanage and subsequently suggest to Akiyama that he become friends with the protagonist. But he is not very happy with the idea, as they will make even more fun of him. And next, Hitori approaches the group of boys to introduce himself politely. One of the boys, after hearing him, offers to be his friend if he meets a condition, and then shows him a rope at a great height that he must cross if he wants to be his friend. Migi, without hesitation, sets out to complete the challenge. Akiyama, on the other hand, laments that they will only make fun of him. Suddenly, Hitori falls from the rope, though to everyone's surprise, he decides to try again. This time, it is Dali who, like his brother, falls halfway and then tries again. The rest of the Boy Scouts observe how, no matter how many times the new boy falls, he tries again in less than 3 seconds. So, not understanding what is happening, they wonder if he is so desperate to make a friend that he doesn't mind getting hurt. Akiyama, for his part, watches him with concern, remembering how he never gave up even though everyone said he should. For that reason, with great emotion, he yells at Hitori not to give up. Dali, hearing him, makes a great effort and manages to cross the rope bridge. He then goes to the boys who challenged him and reminds them of their promise. But they continue to deny being his friends as he used his hands to cross. And just when he was starting to get frustrated, Akiyama approaches him to ask to be friends. He offers to let him visit his house so he can show him his bird, and this makes Hitori very happy. The scene changes, and we see Hitori arrive at his friend's house, where he is received with great kindness. And while they enjoy a cherry pie, Akiyama tells the protagonist that his parents are working and that his older sister must be sleeping. For that reason, Migi takes the opportunity to investigate his friend's house. Migi discovers the paisley wallpaper in one of the rooms, and for that reason, tells his brother they need to talk. Dali tells him to investigate the room well, but with great care because Akiyama's sister is sleeping there. Subsequently, after entering the room, he realizes that the wallpaper is not the same as he remembers. Meanwhile, Akiyama shows Dali his attempts to fly, and Dali thinks he can buy time by just staying silent. But suddenly, Akiyama apologizes for boring him and tells him he will bring a board game. However, he first has to look for it in his sister's room, and for that reason, Dali stops him, saying he wants to hear more of his stories. He is surprised and agrees to tell him more about his desire to be a bird, something he has never talked about with anyone, because they always laugh at him. Hitori assures him he won't laugh, and for that reason, Akiyama confesses that there is something he wants to show him. For his part, Migi, in Akiyama's sister's room, realizes that this is not the house he remembers. And then we move to Dali, who is surprised to see the bird costume his friend showed him. Akiyama asks if it scares him, and the protagonist replies that it doesn't, he just stepped back to see it completely. So his friend says that's a good idea and wants to go to his sister's room to use her mirror. But Dali doesn't let him leave and demands that he show his entire being to him. Meanwhile, Migi has been caught by Akiyama's sister and enjoys being hugged by her. Later, the brothers, back at their house, talk about what they learned during the day. But Dali notices that his brother is unfocused and reminds him of their true objective. The next day, Hitori visits Maruta's house. And although he was received very happily by his whole family there, Migi and Dali believe that Maruta is planning something because he seems very irritating. So they decided to proceed with caution. The scene changes, and Hitori gets excited to see all the toys in Maruta's room. But when he tries to touch them, the little boy, in a terrifying voice, asks him to use gloves before touching them so as not to leave his germs. And as they spend their day together, Migi begins to get enraged by Maruta's attitudes. However, he tries to remain calm, remembering his brother's words. For his part, Maruta asks the protagonist about his life in the orphanage and how they had fun. Dali, on the other hand, investigates the house without finding any paisley wallpaper. For that reason, he believes it's not the place they're looking for, and then sets out to find Migi so they can return to base. But as he tries to pick him up, he observes Maruta taking advantage of his brother, hitting him and laughing at him, so he decides to take his place. And Maruta, for his part, thinks about not letting him escape now that he has found a game to take advantage of. He then proposes to the protagonist that whoever loses the next game will be the other's sidekick. But when he thought he would win easily, Dali beat him and began to hit him as revenge for what he did to his brother. And suddenly, Migi interrupts him because he has already started to lose his cool. Finally, Hitori says goodbye to Maruta's home, but not before teaching him a lesson. The next day, Hitori's parents introduce him to their housekeeper named Mitsuyama, who asks them to call her Michan. Hitori looks at her shyly and gets nervous when she gets too close, complimenting his hair and trying to know about his life, so Mrs. Sonoyama asks Michan not to intimidate her son. After finding out that she has been doing housework for 20 years, Hitori asks Michan if she only cleans this house. Michan replies that besides her house, she cleans several houses in Oregon, which surprises Hitori. The protagonist takes the opportunity and decides to ask her what the other houses she cleans are like, but she replies that she can't because what happens in the other houses is a secret. And Mr. Sonoyama tells his son that it's obvious, as he wouldn't like them to go around talking about his underwear. His wife, hearing this, says that Hitori shouldn't be ashamed because his striped underpants are very cute. The protagonist, hearing them talk about his underwear, stands up and leaves the place angrily because they are embarrassing him. So when he gets to his room, he takes off his underwear and, very annoyed, tells Dali that he doesn't wear them by choice. Migi then tells his brother that they must find their mother's killer, and so he agrees to wear these clothes. And while imitating his adoptive mother, Dali laughs at him, so he asks him to do it again. His brother agrees, and this causes an outburst of laughter from Dali, who believes Migi has a specialty that could be useful. In the next scene, we see Michan apologizing to Mrs. Sonoyama because of her other jobs. And suddenly, Mrs. Sonoyama observes her son begging for help, so she runs to help him. However, that was just a distraction for Migi to try to get information from Michan about the houses in the town. And then we discover that his plan was successful because Michan told him that the Ichijo family has a room with paisley wallpaper. Hearing this, Migi remembers when his mother introduced them, and then thanks Michan for the information. But suddenly, to his surprise, Michan begins to talk about how everything in her life changed for the better with Hitori's arrival. Migi is amazed to hear her, and at night, thinking about her words, he remembers his mother who always protected him. So he tells Dali that now they must earn the trust of Eiji, the Ichijo's son, to be able to search every last corner of their home. The next morning, we see the boys getting ready to go to school and fulfill their mission. Upon arrival, Mrs. Sonoyama tells her son that the class lists are in front of them, and then shows him that he will be in class 1C, which is perfect for a good boy like him. The protagonist watches attentively, and suddenly Akiyama approaches with a big hug because they will be in the same class. However, Hitori is focused on finding Eiji's class until he locates him in class 1-1, so he asks his mother about that choice, and she tells him that Eiji is part of the special promotion. But since the protagonist doesn't know what his mother is referring to, she tells him that's where the smartest children go, which worries Dali. Dali later attends the meeting to receive the greeting from the representative of the new students, a position held by Eiji. On the other hand, after a while, Migi finally arrives at school hoping to find his brother, who, during Eiji's speech, notices the difference that exists between the different classes. Suddenly, a boy interrupts him, asking if he was raised in an orphanage. Hearing this, Dali thinks he found out because of Maruta and gets annoyed with the young man. Afterwards, the protagonist walks through the school until Akiyama tries to approach him, but Dali recommends not to get close to him because otherwise they will bother him if they are together. Akiyama replies that it doesn't matter because those who studied here already know. Later, Dali tells his brother that they need to get good grades on the exams to move to a higher class. But Migi, very worried after trying to study math, tells him it will be a thorny path and suggests to Dali that perhaps they could become friends with Eiji during recess. He thinks it might be possible, and suddenly they are interrupted by boys entering the bathroom. Migi, hearing that Eiji is there, tries to approach him, complimenting him on his speech. But when Migi wants to show the rest that he is friends with Eiji, the young man denies it because he saw that he belongs to class 1C. The scene changes, and Dali, during the entrance photo with his parents, thinks about how Eiji doesn't accept talking to stupid people. So he quickly switches places with his brother and decides to get good grades. But during the process, he begins to worry his parents because he was acting strange. At night, Migi and Dali compare their grades after taking practice exams. Dali tells his brother that they are on the wrong track, and since the exams are coming soon, he has found a place for him to concentrate. But as he speaks, he notices that Migi is distracted, thinking about the goddess he saw today. So Dali scolds him because it's not the time to fall in love, as they now need to get smart. However, Migi ignores him and tells him what the long, black-haired goddess is like. Dali, at first, threatens to hit him. But seeing that his brother really desires her, he recommends that he win her over, so Migi, hearing this, says very excitedly that he will do just that. The scene changes, and we can see Hitori trying to interact with the library goddess. She, after hearing his introduction with a little embarrassment, tells him that her name is Sally. But just as the protagonist was getting his hopes up, she tells him she's not interested in fools and that he should come back when he's smarter. Migi quickly moves away from the place, and suddenly we see that it was actually Dali who had disguised himself as the young woman. He tells us that after finding a place to concentrate, because they always kicked him out, he had to disguise himself. However, he is surprised that Migi has fallen in love with him, which he now thinks will be very useful. The scene changes, and we see Migi trying to deceive Sally, although he doesn't succeed, as Dali discovered his lies. For that reason, he invites him to study together after class. And subsequently, as the days go by, Dali is glad that Migi's grades are improving, so he decides to go a step further. This causes his brother to confess to Sally that he is in love, and Dali uses this to his advantage to demand that he get a score of 100 in language and English, so she will fall in love with him. Finally, we observe that the time for the exams has arrived. After spending the day taking them, Dali is happy with his scores, but he is worried about Migi's. When Migi arrives, he surprises him by showing that he has gotten a 100 in language and English. Dali, seeing his brother, remembers all the effort he made to become smarter and, taking pity on him, asks him to go on a date the next Sunday. The scene changes, and we see the boys enjoying their date, touring the aquarium. But suddenly, Migi gives Sally a pendant, so Dali thinks he can no longer deceive his brother. For that reason, he tells him that he will be going to a very distant city, which breaks Migi's heart. Migi still decides to show strength and tells him that his pendant, broken in half, symbolizes the union of their hearts. And then, at night, Dali asks Migi how he is, to which his brother, crying, can only hug him. The next day, we see Eiji discover that Hitori is number 1 in his class among the regular promotion, which surprises him. Chapter 5. In the next scene, we can see that Migi and Dali are excited because they will finally be able to search the Ichijo house. Dali asks his brother to be in charge of distracting them, as he will be in charge of looking for the paisley wallpaper. He then warns him that they must be cautious as always, which Migi promises to do as always. On the other hand, Eiji, during the night, thinks that Hitori Sonoyama is a problem he has encountered. The next day, Hitori and his family arrive at the Ichijo house, where Reiko receives them happily for having such an intelligent son and then congratulates the protagonist for having placed first among the regular class. Meanwhile, Dali checks room by room of the Ichijo house without finding the paisley wallpaper, which annoys him. On the other hand, Reiko asks Hitori's parents how they have educated him, to which they respond that they did nothing. The protagonist intervenes and tells her that his mother taught him to bake pies, which caught Mrs. Riko's attention. Dali, for his part, wonders if the Ichijo are innocent, although he confesses to us that he has a strange feeling about them. And he then proceeds to watch the table, as he also thinks the invitation was somewhat strange. But suddenly, he hears Reiko telling the Sonoyama family that they are always smiling. And for that reason, she believes that perhaps Hitori could commit crimes, which leaves everyone speechless. Reiko then asks her son to proceed to show what they mean. So Eiji picks up a jacket and shows it to Hitori, asking if he recognizes it. The protagonist, upon seeing the jacket, realizes it holds a memory of his mother and stands up. Eiji then asks him to keep his hands where he can see them and questions him for having checked his neck upon seeing the jacket, as he can see that he is wearing the button he stole, which leaves Hitori stunned. His mother intervenes and assures that her son would not be capable of stealing anything, and then questions what the reason would be to steal a friend's pajama button. Eiji says he wonders the same thing, and that's why, since he trusts Hitori, he wants them to clear things up, so he asks him to get undressed. Migi, for his part, sees that his brother is backing him up and starts to cry, reproaching Eiji for being very mean for doubting him. But Eiji, firm in his stance, tells him that he is only trying to trust him, and for that reason repeats his request. And so, Migi tries to buy time by saying that he is embarrassed to get undressed until his brother helps him with the situation. Eiji, tired of the nonsense, moves to undress him with his own hands, and this makes Dali nervous, who doesn't know if he will be able to help Migi in time. However, Dali manages to recover the memory of his mother just in time, and so Migi begins to mock Eiji. But Eiji, unwilling to give up, pulls down his pants and begins to inspect him more closely. Hitori's parents tell Eiji that it's enough and suggest he check the washing machine if he wants. But ignoring their words, he decides to call his dog, which scares Dali, as Eiji had them sniff the jacket to follow a trail. Dali, hearing his orders, thinks of discarding the memory and fleeing quickly before they discover him. But before he can do so, Eiji's dog reaches his side before he can move. And this makes the protagonist nervous because they are going to discover that there are two of them. But suddenly, Migi interrupts before everyone looks under the table, confessing that he was the one who took the button, and to his parents' surprise, he proceeds to invent a story about why he stole Eiji's button. Reiko, seeing the situation, again asks the protagonist's parents how they have educated him, and they proceed to beg for forgiveness for their son. She then asks them what would happen if the orphanage found out about this event. She then tells them that if that happens, they would never see their son Hitori again, so she suggests they leave him at her house until Hitori can have a healthy mind, which leaves everyone speechless. The scene changes, and we observe how Eiji has locked the protagonist in a room to feed him as if he were a dog. And while the protagonist refuses to eat that, Eiji demands that he confess how he has a button that he lost 8 years ago. Migi replies that he found it on the bathroom floor, to which Eiji replies that he is lying because he has already searched the whole house. So, because Hitori is not cooperating, Eiji decides it's time to re-educate him from scratch. Dali, for his part, observes the room where Migi was trapped and promises that he will soon get him out of there. But first, he discovers that he absolutely has to deal with Eiji's dog, which is trained. And after trying to move it by force without success, he thought the dog would bite him. However, the animal shows him that it was only looking for someone to play with, and for that reason, he promises that after saving his brother, he will return to play with it. In the next scene, we observe a memory of Migi with his mother and his brother, but suddenly he is interrupted by Dali, who is on the other side of the door, trying to save him. Migi stops him and says that he will remain a prisoner to take advantage of the fact that the Ichichos don't know there are two of them, which will make them lower their guard. His brother, very worried, asks him if he is okay and if he is eating, to which Migi answers yes to both questions. So Dali, trusting his brother's word, tells him that after investigating the house, he found no clues. And Migi reminds him that from the room they are looking for, they used to hear the Song of the Bugs. For that reason, he believes that on the other side of the wall, there might have been a piano, and this helps Dali realize that there is a secret room. He then asks his brother to check the wallpaper of the room he is in. Migi, upon doing so, informs his brother that they have finally found where they used to live. And suddenly, he finds the marks they made as children, with a message from their mother congratulating them for succeeding, which causes him to burst into tears, making a lot of noise, despite Dali asking him to calm down. Subsequently, Reiko enters the place to feed Migi, who wouldn't stop crying, with a baby bottle. The scene changes, and we observe Dali trying to open a door while telling us that he is spying on the Ichichos' conversations, as they know how to hide things, and it's also strange how they don't talk to each other, not even about Migi, whom they have locked up. On the other hand, Dali wonders what relationship they have with his mother's button and thinks about whether it might be a message from her. He begins to reflect and doubts whether Eiji could be the killer, although he doesn't believe it because he was only 5 years old at the time. So he tells us that trying to figure out who the killer is similar to entering a labyrinth, and for that reason, he wants to investigate the family father's study. But before that, he is interrupted by someone mysterious, but suddenly he realizes that it was Mikan who had covered his eyes. She tells him how his parents are very sad because he will be staying with the Ichichos for a while, and then reveals that on Wednesdays she works as a housekeeper for this family. Dali, hearing her, decides to use the woman to help him, and after failing to do so, he takes the opportunity to enter the family father's study. The protagonist begins to look through some books with photos, and there, in the reflection of a glass, he discovers his mother. He asks Michin if she knows her, and she replies that perhaps she was the housekeeper at that time, which is strange for her age. And since she is also interested in discovering secrets, she decides to help the protagonist. However, at the last moment, she changes her mind, so Dali decides to dirty the floor to make her accompany him. In this way, he gets Michan to collaborate in his investigation by helping him search in high places. She later confesses that she is dying to find a secret about the impeccable Ichijo family to tell someone else. And suddenly, thanks to Michan, they discover the entrance to a secret room behind a painting. Michan goes ahead to see what they can find, and upon entering, they see a scale model of the town of Oregon with its inhabitants. Subsequently, Dali discovers that the Ichichos have information on all the inhabitants of the town, so they both conclude that the Ichichos are watching the town. Suddenly, they hear footsteps approaching, and for that reason, Michan decides to hide the protagonist, telling him not to come out until the noise is gone. Later, Dali comes out of his hiding place and finds Michan's doll without a head, which scares him. Meanwhile, Eiji feeds his dog, who then offers its food to Dali because he was starving. The protagonist, surprised by its noble gesture, decides to accept and eat the dog food. Later, when everyone is asleep, Dali approaches his brother to tell him what he discovered and then tells him that for that reason, it is dangerous to stay in this place, so he suggests returning to base to think. But Migi reveals that he wants to take care of everything, which Dali doesn't like because they are two in one. However, Migi assures him that now he will be able to get inside the Ichijo family's head, although he can't tell him how he will do it. And next, we observe Migi acting like a baby with Reiko to ask her things about the family. But she, without being carried away, puts a pacifier in his mouth and warns him that babies don't talk like that, so she knows he is faking. After leaving the place, Migi gets frustrated, thinking that he must become a perfect baby for Reiko to lower her guard. So, proclaiming himself the king of imitations, he promises himself to act his best. The scene changes, and we see Reiko arriving at the room to scold the protagonist for eating a plastic toy. Subsequently, discovering that his act is working, Migi sets his mind on being more than just a baby to achieve his goal. Meanwhile, Dali begins to read psychology books he found in the Ichijo father's office. But suddenly, hearing a suspicious noise, he goes to check on his brother, fearing he might be in danger. Upon arriving, peeking through a crack in the door, he can see Migi acting like a baby, so unable to believe it, he starts laughing, which causes Migi to get distracted. However, Migi decides that he won't care if his brother laughs, as he will now show him how he should act. And after falling to the ground because he is learning to walk, he manages to get Reiko to lower her guard, confessing to him that he is now part of the Ichijos. Dali, for his part, seeing how his brother managed to get into their heads without being defeated, proudly congratulates him on his effort. And thanks to that, they will now move on to the next phase in which they will expose the family's guts, both of them together. In the next scene, we see Hitori being invited to the family table, and there Reiko asks her children to teach things to Hitori, who is only 5 years old. During dinner, Hitori begins to ask questions, prompting Reiko to tell her children to encourage his curiosity by answering. Because of this, all family members tell lies to be able to answer Migi's uncomfortable questions. But while they think no one notices, they don't know that under the table, Dali is taking note of all their lies. Suddenly, Eiji, who suspects Hitori, decides to confront him, so he must pretend very well to avoid being discovered. Later, Reiko informs him that he will return to his house the next day and also says that she has already told the Sonoyamas. After she leaves the room, the brothers believe that if they leave the house, their plan will fail. But suddenly Migi stops responding to Dali, which worries him, so he enters the room. Upon doing so, he discovers Migi looking at the doodles they made on the wall as children. Dali, with tears in his eyes, assures him that their mother would ask them not to give up, so they decide to organize the information they have gathered and try to do something tonight. But after analyzing the information, they conclude that they have no decisive clue to accuse the culprit. Suddenly, Dali gets an idea to obtain information upon seeing Migi playing, pretending to have a Ouija board. The scene changes, and we see Dali using a ghost doll to scare the Ichijo family father, as he wants to see how he reacts to the presence of his mother in the room. The man, upon seeing her, quickly hugs Metri, confessing that he missed her very much, which unsettles the boys. He then asks Metri where she has been all the time he has been looking for her, but suddenly he notices she is injured, and this causes Dali to decide to flee quickly with his brother. After managing to escape, he tells his brother that he is innocent because his reaction proves it. However, he wonders if perhaps his mother was the Ichijo father's lover. Migi, hearing this, is amazed to think that he might be his father, and Dali asks him not to get distracted by that now, as he believes the one who killed his mother must be Reiko. For that reason, they quickly head to her room with the same strategy. The woman, upon seeing the ghost, lets out a terrifying scream and flees the place at full speed, which makes the boys think she is their mother's killer. And after chasing her, they see that Reiko looked for a weapon to face the ghost. Dali, seeing her use a pair of scissors to kill someone, believes she thinks she is facing a living person, and that's why Migi is surprised to think that she is also innocent. Meanwhile, Reiko tries to find Metri, but just as she was about to discover the boys, she is interrupted by her husband. He tries to calm her down, but because of this, Reiko was able to see Metri, so she attacked her with the scissors. Migi and Dali, seeing where the scissors struck, can't believe they are still alive, yet they still manage to escape. On the other hand, Karen and Eiji are locked in a room wondering what is happening. Eiji, very impatient, suddenly decides to go out and see what is happening, even if it means disobeying his mother's order. Meanwhile, Migi and Dali encounter the Ichijo's dog. For that reason, Dali intervenes, calming the beast. However, when Migi tries to approach his brother, he runs into Eiji, who is surprised to see Metri. He asks her what she is doing here and if they are now lost because of it. After wetting his pants, he flees quickly. The brothers, for their part, quickly return to the room where Migi was sleeping and are amazed that the killer is Eiji. The next day, we can see that Hitori has returned to his home, where his parents received him very happily. They tell him they thought about infiltrating the Ichijo house to be able to see him. Akiyama, who is also at the party, confesses that he was waiting for the opportunity to sneak in from the sky. On the other hand, we observe Dali in his room, suffering from all the mistreatment he endured at the Ichijo house. Meanwhile, Migi, who was with his parents, decides to pretend to be sick to go take care of his brother. The scene changes, and we see the Sonoyamas taking care of Dali after his brother switched their places. And then we can observe how Eiji was very affected by the encounter with Mitri. For his part, Migi wonders how Eiji could have killed his mother, and Dali tells him they need to investigate to find out. And for that reason, Dali tells his brother that he will be in charge of interrogating their suspect. The next day, we see Migi heading to school, and Dali, on the other hand, disguises himself as Sally. He promises himself to bring out the truth about his mother's death to help his brother, so he thinks that if he approaches Eiji as a woman, the young man will surely let his guard down. The scene changes, and we hear Eiji's friends asking him what type of girls he likes. Eiji replies that he doesn't classify women so simply, and his answer does not satisfy his friends, who insist. But he tells them that someone dedicated to studying has no time for women and subsequently leaves the table with the excuse that he has other things to do. However, he is actually heading to the bathroom because he feels sick, as they mentioned a blonde woman. Eiji complains that it's happening to him again, and so he tries not to remember her to be perfect again as always. But suddenly Sally comes out and approaches him, mocking him for having thrown up the entire day's menu. Hearing her, he threatens to tell that she was wandering in the boys' bathroom if she tells anyone what she saw. For her part, the young woman ignores his threats and runs away quickly, leaving Eiji very worried, who runs after her. And after catching up to her by grabbing her hair, he offers her money, which Sally rejects without a second thought. She tells him that the only thing she wants is to keep seeing embarrassing sides of him, which upon hearing leaves Eiji worried. In the next scene, we observe Eiji showing a childhood photograph to Sally. Eiji tells her that, with that photo, he has already paid her, and Sally refuses because this was not enough, as she wants to see more photos. This causes the young man to show her more photos of his family with him as a child. Dali, for his part, finds something suspicious in 2 photos related to the button that was a memento of his mother, and for that reason, he asks Eiji what happened on those days. He replies that he doesn't remember very well, trying to change the subject, but Sally stares at him fixedly, and, knowing that the photos have run out, demands that he now tell her stories about his past. Eiji, for his part, thinks this is not fair, because he is giving her a lot of information and she hasn't even told him her name. Later, we see Eiji setting out to find information about the mysterious young woman, but he finds nothing, as he has not been able to find her anywhere in the school. And then, we move to the protagonist, who hears his teacher, Kodama, ask him to go to the lab for the next class. However, as the protagonist is a bit down, his friend Akiyama carries him there on his back. And while this is happening, we see Migi complaining that Dali always gets the best part of the investigations. But suddenly, in a corner of the school, he finds half of the pendant he had given to Sally, and for that reason, upon arriving home, he very happily tells his brother that she has returned. Dali, hearing this, asks him what is happening, and so Migi shows him what he found, which amazes his brother. Seeing it, he gets angry for being so careless, and then tells his brother that Sally did not return, which saddens him greatly. But the next day, not caring what his brother told him, Migi decides to put up posters with Sally's face to look for her. Dali, for his part, upon seeing the posters, laughs at the drawing his brother made and thinks he doesn't have to worry about being caught. The scene changes, and we observe Migi frustrated for not receiving any information. But suddenly he sees Akiyama drawing, analyzing the protagonist's scribbles, as he believes his drawings are avant-garde and few people will understand them. Akiyama then shows him that he does understand the drawings Migi made in his notebook, and thanks to that, he shows him that he was able to make a better drawing of Sally. Migi, upon seeing what he did, was fascinated and set out to put up new posters all over the school. The new posters caught everyone's attention, and one of the girls thinks she is the same girl Eiji is looking for. So Migi, hearing her, decides to follow Eiji, who was secretly about to meet with Sally. Upon arriving at their meeting, the young woman asks Eiji what Christmas was like when he was 5 years old. He agrees to tell her, and as he does, he wonders why he has unnecessary feelings for the mysterious woman. But suddenly, they are interrupted by Hitori, who takes Sully's hand to take her away from the place because she is in danger. Eiji, seeing this, stops them and reproaches Hitori for talking with the young woman. And this causes them both to fight, leaving Sally in the middle, who decides to reveal to Hitori that she is dating Eiji. The scene changes, and we can see how Eiji has tidied up his entire house awaiting Sally's arrival. Upon arriving, Dali pretends to have never seen Eiji's house and thinks that today he will take the opportunity to hypnotize the young man. On the other hand, Hitori, comforted by his parents, cries inconsolably because his Sally is surely at Eiji's house. His mother, seeing his sadness, tells him it's time to drink to forget his sorrows, and then the whole family toasts to Hitori's broken heart, who says he cannot forget his love. In the next scene, we observe Dali trying to get Eiji into bed to facilitate his plan to hypnotize him. But upon trying, he realizes it will be very difficult because Eiji does not want to sleep or give in to his charms. For that reason, he decides to play his seduction card, which causes Eiji, very nervous, to call her an indecent and vulgar woman. He confesses that he feels disappointed as they have not even sworn to be a couple. But since Sally does not understand what the young man is referring to, he tells her that before lying down next to her, they need to have a kiss. And although Dali still doesn't understand what he means, he tells him to hurry up and have a kiss, so Eiji approaches her to try to kiss her, which makes Dali very uncomfortable. After refusing to do it, he thinks it's a sacrifice for the mission and quickly lunges at Eiji. Meanwhile, at the Sonoyama house, Hitori's father tells him that his mother rejected him several times before they became a couple. He tells him that she was a very popular girl, and so he decided to attack relentlessly until he got everything they have now. For his part, Dali continues trying to hypnotize Eiji, and after a good while, he began to interrogate the young man. Dali discovered that Eiji killed his mother between Christmas Eve and Christmas Day, but he is suddenly interrupted by Migi, whom he asks to leave immediately because he is busy. However, Migi approaches to confess that he loves her very much and to offer again the pendant they had together. And without either of them expecting it, Eiji stands up to push Hitori from the second floor, so Dali had to intervene and save his brother, scolding him because there are things more important than love. After receiving a bite from Migi, Sally quickly questions Eiji for wanting to kill Hitori. But this causes Eiji, affected by the situation, to confess what happened on Christmas Eve when he was 5 years old. Eiji reveals that he thought he had seen a ghost, and for that reason, he pushed Mitari out the window. He quickly told his mother, who found nothing upon arriving, and knew his story was false because he saw a ghost. In the next scene, Dali runs at full speed to his home to tell Migi that Eiji was the one who killed their mother. But when he tells his brother that the time for revenge has come, the young man looks at his hand and confesses that he does not plan to forgive him. And after several days, we move to Akiyama's house, where we discover that Hitori is living there in hiding. On the other hand, submerged in loneliness, Dali is sad because his brother is not with him. Meanwhile, Akiyama, very worried, asks his friend what has happened to him, because he has been like this for 3 days. Akiyama thinks Hitori doesn't want to go back to his house because perhaps they mistreat him, although he doesn't believe his parents are capable of doing so. However, no matter what happens, Akiyama reveals to us that he wants to save Hitori just as he did. And so, they begin to talk about how everyone in the city pretends to be perfect when they have many problems. But suddenly, his sister interrupts him to inform him that his friend has come to the house. Akiyama, a little confused, goes down to check who it is because he can't think of who could have come. And upon opening the door, he finds Hitori again, which leaves him speechless. He asks him what he is doing outside, and Hitori replies that he left through the window. After re-entering the house, Hitori asks his friend to prepare him some tea. Akiyama, a little confused by the situation, calls him capricious and goes to prepare his drink. And after his departure, Dali takes the opportunity to enter his room and ask Migi to come home. He tells him that it's time to get revenge on Eiji together, so he demands that Migi come to his senses. But without success, he is interrupted by Akiyama, who has returned with juice because he had no more tea. During his stay, Dali gets annoyed because Akiyama does not leave the room, and suddenly he asks him to help him study to get a change of scenery. But Dali gets annoyed at having to pretend to be good, as he needs to convince Migi quickly. And unexpectedly, Migi makes a noise in the closet, causing Akiyama to want to check, so Dali had to hit his friend so he wouldn't discover that Migi was hidden. He then confesses that he didn't want to hurt him. He only hit him because they need to finish reviewing. Akiyama, suspecting nothing, tells him that he now understands why he is the best of the year. Dali replies that he does it because he promised his mother, and this causes him to think that Mrs. Sonoyama forces him to study. So he tells Hitori to stop reviewing, as it's not necessary to be good and do everything his mother tells him to. He then tells him that he knows who he really is, which causes Migi to wonder who he really is. But suddenly, they are interrupted by Akiyama's sister, who complains to her brother that he is making too much noise. Migi takes the opportunity to switch places with Dali without him expecting it, and then reveals to his friend that from today on, no one else will give him orders, while looking intently at his brother. Akiyama, upon hearing this, is very happy because his friend has finally been freed. On the other hand, Dali was affected by Migi's words, so he tries to go after him. But by the time he arrives, Migi is already fleeing quickly with his friend, shouting that he is now free. Dali, on the other hand, returns to his mother's grave and promises that he will take revenge, even if he has to do it alone. Finally, upon returning home, Dali finds his mother, who shows him a costume and tells him about the contest that will be held in the square. But even though she is very excited, the protagonist, upon arriving in his room with his mosquito costume, is not very pleased and, very sad, thinks that Migi should wear it instead, as it seems stupid to him. The scene changes, and while eating with his parents, Dali hears them assure him that Eiji will also participate. Mrs. Sonoyama tells him that Eiji won last year dressed as a painting. For his part, Dali thinks it will be the perfect moment to take revenge and kill Eiji in front of the public. Later, we observe Dali trying to do all the tasks he used to do with his brother by himself, but after trying, he realizes he can't do the same as before. After failing to give his father a massage, the old man notices that something is wrong with him, so Mr. Sonoyama offers for them to bathe together and tries to cheer him up there. Thanks to their games, Dali becomes convinced that he must eliminate Migi from within himself, as this will make him stronger. The scene changes, and we see the protagonist coming down the stairs wearing the mosquito costume, ready for his revenge to begin. Upon arriving at the costume contest, Dali observes all the participating costumes and thinks they are underwhelming. Finally, after a while, his moment to participate has arrived, so his mother asks him to focus on being charming. But when he gets on stage, the whole town laughs at his costume. However, Dali suddenly starts spitting blood, soiling the entire audience and earning boos. So, after the performance, his mother tells him that he is too avant-garde a person, because if they were in a punk rock contest, they surely would have won. Meanwhile, Dali hears some girls believe that the winner will be Eiji, and that he will sit on the throne of glory as he does every year. But Dali thinks that this year, Eiji will not sit on the throne of glory as he always does, because he is going to remodel it to be the throne of death and humiliation. The scene changes, and the contest announcer declares that the moment has come to see the champion everyone is waiting for. Finally, Eiji takes the stage with a very withdrawn appearance and seemingly without a costume, which leaves everyone speechless. Dali, seeing this, worries that he won't win this way and thinks this happened because of the incident with Migi. He therefore thinks of a plan to help Eiji win, even though he is not wearing a costume. So Dali subsequently spreads a rumor about what Eiji's costume is about, thus managing to get everyone's attention. The announcer, astonished by the situation, asks a lady what is happening. She tells him that Eiji sold the instrument he valued so much to buy a piece of bread to feed his younger sister. Her words lead the announcer to understand that Eiji is dressed as a beggar, but a woman corrects him and says that he is actually a troubadour singing with his heart. This causes Eiji to automatically be the winner of the contest with 90% of the votes. Dali, for his part, observes how everything is going perfectly and eagerly waits for Eiji to sit on his throne, as he wants to see his humiliating death from the front row. But suddenly, Eiji withdraws from the contest, which caused astonishment among all present, who admire him for staying in character. Subsequently, the announcer indicates that due to his withdrawal, the winners are Akiyama and Migi. Dali worries when he sees his brother heading to the throne and hurries to try to stop him. However, he doesn't arrive in time and regrets that the trap has affected his brother. But when he raises his head, he observes that Eiji has thrown himself at the throne to save Hitori. And now both brothers watch the situation in surprise, not understanding what happened. The scene changes, and we can see that Eiji is in the hospital accompanied by his mother, who is furious. A few days later, we see Akiyama telling Migi that Eiji has already been discharged from the hospital, which leaves him surprised. His friend, for his part, confesses that he was worried as his life is safe thanks to him, and for that reason he considers him a hero. But Migi, remembering what happened, wonders what the reason was for Eiji to save him. Subsequently, we see Migi return home, where he finds Dali, crying and very sick, accompanied by his mother. Migi is surprised to hear his brother repeat his name, and Mrs. Sonoyama doesn't understand what he means. But she still decides to sneak into the house to get a wig with which she will pretend to be Sally. The next day, Migi decides to visit Eiji, and upon arriving at his house, Reiko tells him that her son cannot receive visitors. However, Eiji tells her to let her in, which astonishes Migi, who gets nervous. Then, upon entering the house, they all go to the young man's room, who asks his mother to leave them alone. But even though Reiko agreed to leave them alone, she stands behind the door to eavesdrop on their conversation. So Eiji, who notices this, begs Sally to speak in a low voice so his mother won't hear them. And Sally then asks him why he saved Hitori, to which he replies that he did it to atone for his crimes. She tries to inquire more about that, and the young man confesses that he is a criminal. But before speaking, he asks his mother to go buy some country bread. And after Reiko leaves, he reveals to Sally that he has something to show her. Eiji later shows the protagonist the model of Oregon that Dali had mentioned, which leaves him speechless. The young man confesses that he didn't know his mother's motives for doing something like that, but now he has discovered that she watches over the town to keep the secret of her crime safe. And to Sally's surprise, he tells her that when he was 5 years old, on Christmas, he pushed a woman who was at his window. However, his mother made him believe that she was a ghost and that no such woman existed in Oregon, although she was real. And suddenly, he shows her a doll of Metri, which makes Migi's jaw drop. But Eiji doesn't stop there and reveals that Karen's dollhouse is a hideout for people who lived here in the past. And it was there that he found the doll of the woman he pushed from his window, hidden under a bed. So perhaps his mother built this model, believing that she was hidden in the town, waiting for her moment to take revenge. But now, she also thinks that someone knows the secret, and that was the reason they tried to kill him. Eiji then reveals that his mother has her sights set on the Sonoyama family, and especially on their son, Hitori. For that reason, the young man believes Hitori is in danger and therefore needs her to warn him of the situation. Sally, surprised, asks him why it has to be her, and he tells her it's because he loves him, and then reveals that he has known since they both vied for her company. But they are suddenly interrupted by Reiko, who asks them if they are playing house in this place. Eiji, seeing how his mother threatens them, throws himself at her to try to get Sally to escape. Sally, seeing his sacrifice, runs quickly. But before she can escape, she is caught by Reiko. So Migi quickly decides to take off his wig to be able to flee. And this enrages Reiko, who tells him he will not escape. But Migi, cornered, decides to hide in Karen's room, whom he has to hold to prevent her from speaking. And when he thought he had finally avoided danger, Reiko approaches her daughter's room, demanding that she open the door. So the girl, after escaping from Hitori, scolds her mother for interrupting her tea party. The protagonist thanked her for protecting him, and the girl then confesses that she is not her mother. Karen tells Hitori that neither she nor her brother came from Reiko's womb, and that's why they only play at being a happy family. She then goes to her dollhouse where she points out who her real family is. On the other hand, Reiko, not having found the protagonist, runs quickly through the town, promising to kill him. The scene changes, and we see her arriving at the Sonoyama's house, who confess to being grateful to Eiji. Reiko tells them he did what any doctor's son would do, and then asks about Hitori. Osamu replies that his son hasn't left his bed since that day because he seems to be psychologically affected. But as she asks them if that's true, the old couple starts to fall asleep because Reiko puts something in their tea. Migi, for his part, is still at the Ichijo's house, wondering what Karen means, and then remembers that Dali is in danger, so he wants to get home quickly. However, Karen recommends he flee from Oregon, which leaves him speechless and scared. But he quickly heads home, and upon arriving, he doesn't understand what is happening when he finds his parents asleep on the sofa during the day. So, with caution, he goes in search of his brother, whom he finds tied up in his bed with his head covered. Dali, seeing him, asks why he came, and suddenly Reiko interrupts them to catch them both. Later, she confesses that she never expected Hitori Sonoyama to be two people at once, and then, after asking them if they are Metri's children, asks where she is hiding. But Migi, enraged, shouts that her son pushed her and killed her, which surprises Dali, as he didn't know he had found out. Reiko, upon hearing that Mitri died, becomes very happy and tells them that they will finally be able to see their dear mother. But Dali warns her that if she murders them, the Sonoyamas will report her, because even if she hides them, she will always leave some trace. She says that since he's right, she will only kill one of the two, so that the Sonoyamas won't have any problems, and then tells them that they should choose who is to die. Which enrages Migi because they would never do that. But his brother interrupts him, and, after describing Migi's attitudes, implies to Reiko that he should be the one to die. However, Dali says that in reality, he is the one who should die, because even though Migi is an idiot, he couldn't live without his company. But in contrast, Migi could forget about both him and the revenge, and he could also go on living. Reiko, upon hearing this, says it is a wise decision and proceeds to take Dali's life before Migi's eyes. And as Dali loses his life, he begins to remember parts of everything he has lived through. But suddenly, Mikan arrives in the room and saves the brothers by using powder to stop Reiko. She tells them that Reiko caught her and buried her alive in the garden. But to everyone's surprise, Karen saved her and later went to visit all those who were expelled from Oregon, where she found Karen's biological mother, who revealed that Reiko actually cannot have children. That's why both Karen and Eiji are adopted. Reiko, hearing her, tries to silence her with a blow, so Michan protects herself with her feather duster, showing great skill. This enrages her, causing them both to start fighting, criticizing each other's physical appearance. Finally, after an exchange of blows, they both fall down the stairs. But when Mikan was preparing to fight on equal terms, Reiko threatened her with a knife. So Sardine intervened to help Mikan and thus managed to stop Reiko. The housekeeper, seeing this, quickly runs to help Migi and Dali, telling them that Reiko does not plan to leave anyone alive. For that reason, she asks them to flee the town and notify the police about what is happening. And then, as she was trying to reveal Eiji's identity, she is murdered by Reiko. The brothers, seeing this, flee on their bicycle driven by Dali, who doesn't want to stop. Later, they stop at a shrine where they wonder if Reiko has killed the Sonoyama family, but Dali assures his brother that she won't, because it's them she really wants. Migi suggests they go back then, and he refuses because if they do, they will die. The next day, the boys wake up to the sound of footsteps of someone who has brought them food. Dali doesn't understand why they left that food in this place, and then understands that it is because of the type of shrine they hid in. He tells his brother that this will be their new hideout, where they won't be found, and then throws their bicycle into the river, because he already told him they are not going back to the Sonoyama's house. But Migi jumps in after the bicycle, refusing to discard the first gift the elderly couple gave them. Dali gets furious and accuses him of caring more about the Sonoyamas than him or their mother. This causes them both to start fighting because Migi tells him that he betrayed him when he decided to die on his own. During the fight, the boys complain about the things the other did wrong, which makes Dali very angry. But after hearing Migi's plan, he questions his motivations, although he agrees to accompany him on his journey back. And because of that, Migi happily rides the bicycle until they reach the town. Meanwhile, at the Sonoyama's house, the police tell them that Hitori is the culprit for Michan's death, as they found the murder weapon under his bed. Upon hearing this, Yuko assures them that her son would never do such a thing. For their part, Migi and Dali observe that the police are accusing them of murder because of Reiko, who framed them. Migi gets very upset upon hearing this, and so his brother promised him that they will expose all the darkness of the Ichijo family. After leaving their house with the intention of one day returning, they wonder what they should do now that everything has become complicated. So Dali suggests they look for Akiyama, who, for his part, was wondering where his friend could be. But when Akiyama returned to his home, he found Hitori, whom he hugged tightly because he was worried about him. Hitori was surprised to receive his hug, and later told him about everything that happened. So Akiyama, upon discovering the truth, confesses that it is difficult to believe his story, but since he told him, he will trust him. The protagonist, upon hearing this, begs for his help, and his friend assures him that he will do it, as he would even lose a wing or two for him. Akiyama then tells him that they will need a powerful weapon to face the Ichijos, and for that, he has an idea. Migi watches his friend leave and asks Dali why he is still hiding. He then says that since Akiyama believed him immediately, he will surely accept that they are two people. Dali, after listening to him, confesses that if it's Akiyama, he will probably accept them, so he decides to come out of the closet. But he suddenly hides again, quickly upon seeing Akiyama return, accompanied by Maruta, who calls Hitori a murderer and then tries to flee to tell his mother. So Hitori had to catch him. Later, the boys tell the whole story to Maruta, who rejoices upon discovering that they need his brain. Migi asks his friend why he brought him along, and Akiyama replies that it's because of his new machine, which they need. The protagonist gets annoyed hearing that, although he still decides to swallow his pride to ask Maruta for help, but he demands to be called Mr. Maruta, which enrages Migi even more. And after Maruta names the group the Beavers, the protagonist suggests they form an alliance with Karen. Maruta, upon hearing this, replies that it's a good idea because she is pretty. For his part, Akiyama asks them how they are going to contact her, since they haven't seen her anywhere since the incident. Maruta ignores them, and then tells them they will use technology to talk to her. In the next scene, we see the chief of the Beavers trying to use a drone to deliver a letter to Karen. However, a raccoon surprised him and ruined the plan, which annoyed Migi. For that reason, He suggests to his friend that they take his machines and then remove him from the group. Migi then says he wants to introduce another candidate, better and more handsome than Maruta. But Akiyama interrupts him because Maruta is doing something. And that's how, thanks to his ingenuity, he managed to talk to Karen. Finally, the boys return to Akiyama's room, where Maruta gives them Karen's message, who cannot leave her home. So, a little ashamed, Migi admits that Maruta did a great job, and that touched his heart, causing him to change his attitude. Maruta later invites them to his secret base, and there they plan what they are going to do. But suddenly Akiyama tells his team that they are missing someone else, and so the boys reveal that they are two people. Akiyama and Maruta, upon seeing this, start to get nervous, so the boys have to calm them down. And after calming things down, the brothers told their story, which completely moved Akiyama. Maruta, on the other hand, complains that they both deceived him, and with his face full of tears, he shows that he understands them. The boys then beg them to keep everything a secret, which they promise to do, and then the boys put their plan into action, first distracting the police in the area. Thanks to Akiyama, the rest of the group contacts Karen, who opens her window to allow the boys access. However, during the attempt to cross with a rope, they discover that the ground is full of traps. Maruta, seeing this, freezes and causes them to almost be discovered. For that reason, Migi had to push him until he entered Karen's room. But in the process, Dali got stuck halfway, and when he was about to fall, Migi had an idea. So the boys worked as a team to reach the room of the young Ichijo girl. Upon arriving, they find Maruta and Karen in a romantic scene, which they must interrupt to continue the plan. They then tell Karen that she will have to act as a hostage so that Reiko confesses, but she tells them that she doesn't think it will be like that, as Reiko prefers Eiji more for having a bit of his father's blood. Migi, upon hearing her, is surprised and asks her who that woman really is. She replies that she always felt strange, as if everything were just a game, but thanks to Michin discovering that Reiko is not her real mother, it made her feel relieved. She then tells them that the woman wants everything to be perfect, both in her family and in the city, so she begs them to put an end to this family. Maruta, who heard her, promises to do so, which causes Karen to kiss him on the mouth. And later, Karen tells the boys to leave the job of being a hostage to her, because she is good at pretending. Karen, after the boys hid, begins to scream in pain so that her father will come to her aid. Thanks to her, the boys were able to infiltrate the rest of the house to look for Eiji in the re-education room. Upon arriving there, they encounter a strange scene with Eiji, and this terrifies Maruta, who does not understand what is happening. Dali, for his part, seeing that Eiji is practically a baby, tells the rest that this will benefit them, as they will interrogate Reiko by taking the defenseless Eiji as a hostage, for which they must first take him to the second floor. Maruta questions this idea because he thinks it would be better to do it in this place, but Migi tells him that if they stay here, they will easily die at the hands of the woman. For that reason, Dali tells him that they must position themselves on the second floor so that Reiko stays on the first, so she won't be a threat. For this, they will need him to make noise downstairs so she comes to the desired place, so that later, when he is hidden, he can record the woman's entire confession. And then they begin their plan by moving Eiji, whom Migi confesses he no longer wants to kill. Dali, hearing this, replies that since he was the one who killed their mother, he is still angry. However, as baby Eiji was about to cry, Dali had to improvise to calm him down, even though he still hates him. But suddenly, ahead of schedule, Maruta makes a noise after being scared by the family dog, and this causes Reiko to start coming down the stairs quickly towards the prison. Migi and Dali, seeing this, try to continue with the plan, but when they asked Maruta for help, they were betrayed. But just as Reiko was about to catch the boys, to their surprise, Maruta intervened, as he never wanted to betray them, and after continuing with the plan, Maruta reminds them that he made a promise, so he will never betray them. Dali then takes Gyaoji Eiji hostage and threatens Reiko with his death if she doesn't tell the truth about her crimes. The woman, seeing the situation she is in, tells them that she will now tell them the story of Metri. And under a great storm, she recounts that in a certain place lived a young woman named Reiko, who dreamed of having a happy family. So, for that, she bought a beautiful house with her husband, who is a doctor. But when her life was going perfectly, she hired a housekeeper. In the next scene, we see how Mitri didn't know how to use the cleaning machines, and for that reason always needed her help. Reiko, seeing that her housekeeper was very clumsy, taught her how to comb her hair so that it wouldn't interfere with her work. So Metri, seeing how she took care of her, confessed that she saw her as an older sister because she admired her very much, and for that reason, her goal was to be a perfect woman in all aspects like her, which made Reiko very happy. During her stay as a housekeeper, Mitri learned how to take care of a house and how to perform maintenance tasks. And due to all the time they spent together, they both began to feel like sisters. But one day, the doctor informed Reiko that she could never get pregnant naturally, which broke her heart. And for that reason, as she always wanted a family, she asked Mitri for a favor, which was to take her place with her husband to have a child. Mitri, who was not very sure about doing it, was influenced by Reiko's words and ended up accepting the favor. But since it didn't work the first time, Reiko continued to force Mitri to sleep with her husband. However, one day she observed how her husband discovered that the one he was sleeping with was Mitri. And even though Mitri denied it, Reiko's husband confessed that he preferred her over his wife because she was not perfect. Hearing that, Reiko went crazy and changed the way she saw Mitri. And back in the present, she confesses to the boys that her life was turned upside down when she met their mother, but then she confesses that one day she locked Mitri in the room for days to get her pregnant. And when she finally got pregnant, she gave birth to 2 blonde-haired creatures, so Reiko only kept Eiji, who looked more like her husband, and Mitri fled with her other 2 creatures, causing the story they already know. Subsequently, Reiko, after finishing her story, tells them, relieved, that she has finally been freed from the curse of imperfection. Dali and Migi, hearing her, tell her to stop shouting nonsense, as she was never cursed just because the doctor told her she wouldn't have children. But she replies that now everything has changed, and so she will now stop chatting. And then, climbing the walls, she takes the camera from Maruta, who faints from fear. The boys, seeing this, ask her if she plans to kill them, just as she did with Mikan. She confesses that she murdered her for knowing too much, and then easily takes the weapon from Migi's hand. She then tries to convince Eiji to come back with her, but due to her appearance, he mistakes her for a ghost. So Eiji quickly pushes her from above, which leaves the boys speechless. He, for his part, confesses that he now understands everything, and that he remembered Mitri's words on the day of her death, as she had come looking for him to reunite him with his brothers, which left the boys speechless. In the next scene, we see the day of the birth of Mitri's children, when Reiko only took Eiji, but after doing so, she left Mitri locked up with her other 2 children so they wouldn't sleep in the open. For years, Reiko kept Mitri and her children prisoners, without the possibility of her seeing Eiji, no matter how much she wanted to. And as they grew, one day, the boys managed to force the lock of their prison. Mitri, seeing this, quickly fled with them, although she never lost hope of recovering her other son. And for that reason, from the top of the mountain, she always watched the Ichijo house. The scene changes, and in the present, Dali tells Eiji that it's impossible for them to be triplets because they are very different. But he reveals what their mother told them the day he pushed her out the window and then asks about her. Dali, without compassion, reveals that he was the one who killed her and then tells him to worry about his own mother. Eiji accepts this and goes to see how Reiko is, wondering who she is or where she comes from. On the other hand, Karen continues her act and keeps her father busy, who hears voices outside the room and therefore begins to shout louder, hoping the boys will take care of everything. Meanwhile, Maruta tells the boys to accompany Eiji, as they are his brothers, to which they refuse because it's not their business. But when he tries to insist, he receives a response from Dali, who is very angry. For his part, Eiji picks up Reiko and takes her with him, hoping to end this whole situation. And then Migi questions Dali's decision, which causes him to say that he shouldn't believe what Eiji said, but they are suddenly interrupted by their father, whom Karen could no longer hold back. He complains that the Sonoyama twins broke into his home, and for that reason, he will call their parents. However, Maruta interrupts him to say that there is a reason for everything, and since he doesn't know him, Maruta introduces himself to Karen's father as her official boyfriend, which astonishes the man. But suddenly, Reiko's scream gets everyone's attention, and they run to see what happened. Upon reaching the re-education room, they find Reiko dead, causing great sadness in Mr. Ichijo. Karen, for her part, interrupts him to check if she is really dead, and upon doing so, they discover that Reiko was only faking her death to lock them all in the room. She reveals that she decided to live for Eiji, and so, after talking with him, they agreed to go to a place where no one knew them, so they could start a new, more perfect life together from scratch. And to her husband's surprise, she confesses that he was an ideal man, although there were things that bothered her. On the other hand, she tells Karen she regrets that she was not like either her or her father. And then she tells Hitori that the Sonoyamas will surely be prepared to adopt another child. Finally, she says goodbye to everyone, and Maruta goes crazy, screaming to be let out. The scene changes, and we see Reiko packing her things to leave the city. But when she thought she would leave with her beloved Eiji, the young man decides to murder her, promising that he will soon catch up to her. And after setting fire to his family's dolls, he decides to burn down the whole house to put an end to this family of lunatics. Meanwhile, in the prisoner's room, Maruta tries to chew a hole in the door with his teeth, and Migi asks his brother what the reason could be for them being locked in this place. Dali, very angry, says he doesn't know what's in Eiji's head because he is a stranger. For his part, Mr. Ichijo doesn't understand why they are doing this to them if they were a family with no problems. Karen, hearing him, asks if he thinks that, even though Reiko forced Eiji to wear diapers. When he hears her, he asks if Eiji is incontinent. The little girl is surprised by what he said, and then indicates that Reiko went crazy because of the way he is, as she first took control of the family and then wanted to expand to all of Oregon. She reveals that perhaps he had a patient too close, and her words astonish her father. But suddenly Maruta interrupts them to tell them he managed to enlarge the hole in the door, and when he was about to keep opening it, a stream of smoke entered through it. Karen, perceiving this, tells them they are going to be burned, which makes everyone desperate, so they try to open the door by any means necessary. Mr. Ichijo, seeing that the children couldn't, tried to break down the door with his fists, but he doesn't succeed either, and the smoke entering the place begins to affect everyone present. Migi, for his part, tries to open the door by hitting his head against it, which worries Dali, who tries to stop him. However, his brother assures him that he is doing it so they can eat cherry pie with the Sonoyamas. Dali, hearing this, imagines the kind of family they would be and begins to cry, very moved. And suddenly the door opens thanks to Akiyama arriving just in time with an axe, to everyone's surprise. He, wearing a costume, first worries about Migi and then tells the rest that it's time to get out. After leaving the room, they all head to Karen's window, through which they entered the house to try to escape. And then, one by one, they jump from the window, even though they are very scared, as is the case with Maruta. But when it was Akiyama's turn to jump, everyone was amazed to see how he even rescued the family dog. However, as soon as he got out, Akiyama tells the boys that Eiji is still inside the house because he saw him through the crack in the door. But he also tells them that Reiko was not moving, and that's why her son stayed hugging her. Akiyama tells them that even though he tried to talk to Eiji, he completely ignored him, as if he didn't want anyone to come near. Migi and Dali, upon hearing this, head to the front of the house from where they hear the song of the bugs coming from inside. Eiji, for his part, reminds his mother that she used to use that piano piece as a lullaby. Lying down beside her, he begins to reminisce about his childhood, just as the twins do from outside. Suddenly, Dali reflects that Eiji could have been him if he didn't have Migi by his side, so he decides to try to help him. Meanwhile, Eiji continues to remember the moments with his mother and confesses that he always dreamed of being a doctor like his father. He did it to bring some peace to her heart, although he feels he didn't achieve it in the right way and apologizes for it. Then he hugs her, thinking that despite everything, she was a wonderful mother. He feels proud to have wanted to be like her and believes that in part, he succeeded. Suddenly Dali interrupts him to ask if he also remembers when he had an accident in his pants as a child, and then tells him that he came, looking for him, because he thought he hated him for what had happened with his mother. Or at least that's what he thought. Now he realizes he judged him wrongly, because they both have more in common than he imagined. The young Ichijo laughs, asks him to stop behaving like his brother, and tells him that if he really feels something, to end it all. But Dali refuses and replies that his revenge will be different. Just at that moment, Migi appears, scolding Dali for entering the house. Seeing him, he asks if he wants to get burned and points out that his clothes are starting to catch fire. Migi starts screaming, causing a great commotion. This annoys Eiji, who shouts at them both to leave. Dali, upon hearing him, comments that Migi also usually ruins his plans, so he advises him to give up. He then says that his real revenge will be for him to now try to live, even if it seems difficult at times. During the struggle, Dali loses his balance and falls from the second floor. Seeing this, Migi pushes Eiji and they both end up falling after his brother. They start looking for him everywhere, but they can't find him. Suddenly, the house starts to crumble, and Migi is almost crushed by the debris. Just when he thought it was all over, the spirit of Mikan appears and dissipates the dust. Thanks to that, he can see Dali, whom he asks to get out of the place immediately. However, Dali asks about Eiji, and Michan points to where he is. The boys see that Eiji is trapped under a large chandelier, so Dali tries to help him and Migi joins him to lift the heavy piece of metal. Eiji, from the floor, asks them to leave him there and asks if they only want him to stay alive to mock him for not being perfect. Dali, hearing this, replies that it's not like that, and assures him that from now on they will invite him to eat cherry pie with them. This surprises Eiji, who begins to imagine what it would be like to live like that, and decides to help his brothers escape the fire. In the next scene, we see the police and firefighters arrive at the scene along with the neighbors. Meanwhile, Akiyama, Maruta, and Karen are very sad and cry for their friends. For their part, the boys who managed to get out alive wonder what to do next. Dali suggests returning home first before telling the world they are okay. But suddenly, Eiji stands up and decides to leave alone to present himself to the police. His father and the others are glad to see him, but he interrupts them to confess his mistakes. Later, at dawn, the police take him away while his brothers watch him with sadness. The scene changes. Akiyama tells us that the Christmas lights are shining again in Oregon, although this time with a more melancholic tone, as the symbol of happiness has disappeared. He then reveals that apart from what he said on the first day, Eiji confessed nothing more to the authorities. However, the police did not completely believe his version thanks to a recording from Maruta that miraculously did not burn, and the support of his father as a defender, Eiji received a less severe punishment. Even so, he will not return from the reformatory soon. On the other hand, Maruta continues his long-distance relationship with Karen, and so every time he sees a twinkling star, he believes it is a Morse code message from his beloved. Akiyama then, while eating with his pet, confesses that Migi and Dali continued with their lives. The scene changes, and we observe the boys living with the Sonoyama family, although they have not yet revealed their secret to them. So when night comes, Migi tries to convince his brother to come out into the open, to which he refuses and then shows him the wound on his face. That's why Migi assures him that the elderly couple will accept them both. But Dali confesses that he doesn't want that, as the couple should pamper their dear Hitori without any other worries. Migi, hearing this, disagrees and asks him what will happen to his life or his happiness. Dali, with tears in his eyes, assures him that he will be happy as long as he is, and then asks him not to worry, as they will continue to be one together because he will live as his shadow. The next day, Hitori attends school, and we see Dali helping his brother from outside the classroom. And not just with theoretical classes, as in physical education, they also work as a team to be the best. Thanks to their effort, they managed to be number one in the special promotion. And for that reason, Hitori began to be very popular among the students, which makes Migi nervous. But suddenly, Akiyama finds him and asks him why he is Migi all the time. Migi, hearing this, is surprised and then tells him in private what Dali told him. Akiyama promises that he won't say anything and then asks Migi if he will continue living as Hitori forever. He, a little sad, tells him that he and Dali act as one, as they do the same things and go to the same places, or at least that's what he thought. Migi confesses to his friend that lately he has been wondering if they are actually different, and then says that he doesn't really want to live as Hitori because he wants to live as Migi and Dali. However, he also doesn't know what Dali thinks about that matter because maybe he doesn't want to live like that. Dali, for his part, after hearing the whole conversation, approaches the bench where the boys were and thinks that he wants to live as Migi's shadow, as that is enough for him. In the next scene, we observe Yuko very excited because Christmas has arrived. Hitori, for his part, asks if Santa will come to visit him and then tells his parents everything he wants him to bring. But they tell him that Santa only gives out one gift per good child and then ask him for how long he thinks he will receive it. He tells them forever, as he considers himself a good boy, no matter how much he grows. Osamu, hearing this, tells him that then, when he has a partner, he will become Santa Claus. Later, in his room, Migi thinks that if they continue to pretend to believe in Santa, they will receive gifts for life. But since Dali doesn't answer, he assures him that they will share the gift they receive. Meanwhile, Dali, upon falling asleep, begins to dream about what would happen when his brother already has a family, and that terrifies him because he doesn't want to be left alone. That's why he woke up crying. But upon doing so, he discovered that there are 2 gifts in his Christmas tree, which surprises the boys. And suddenly, their parents enter Hitori's room, assuring that Santa never makes a mistake. His mother, after the opening of the gifts, tells him that in this place there is a gluttonous and creative child, but also another who is sensitive and very intelligent. They confess to Hitori that it took them a while to notice the differences, and that's why they are now waiting for them downstairs with 2 reserved seats. Migi, very excited, runs to find Dali, but when he does, he refuses to come out. So his brother confesses that it seems they are indeed different and will become even more so as they grow. However, there is something that will not change, and that is that he will be happy if he is also happy. Dali, refusing to accept the truth, ends up understanding his brother's point and agrees to open the door. The scene changes and we see the elderly Sonoyamas sad, thinking the boys won't come down. But suddenly, Migi arrives accompanied by Dali, and this causes them great happiness. And while everyone is very happy, Dali continues to feel sad. That's why his mother shows him that she knows his favorite dish. To their surprise, the elderly couple reveals that they have known for a long time that they were two different people, and then ask them what they should be called, which moved Dali, who couldn't even pronounce his name properly. So they both then joke about their names having another meaning. In the next scene, we move to March 1993, where we see that the Sonoyamas are a happy family. And while their mother calls them to eat, Migi is found doing his art. On the other hand, we observe Dali talking with Maruta while reading a book, and later we see the brothers baking a pie under the attentive gaze of their friends. They confess that they want to see the strange thing that happens when they cook. And then we can see Michin using the flour to communicate with everyone. So then the twins show their friends how to prepare the cherry pie by working as a team. Later, the whole family gathers with the boys' friends, waiting for the arrival of someone special. Migi tells his brother what to do, as he is the only one who can relax Eiji. And then, Eiji and his family arrive at the Sonoyama's house, apologizing for what happened. But when the atmosphere was a bit awkward, Dali, disguised as Sally, approaches Eiji, which makes Eiji start laughing at him, as does the whole family. This embarrasses Dali, who hides under the table. And later, Maruta tells them that although his beloved Karen is beautiful, she surpasses her by far. Akiyama, on the other hand, laughs at Dali, telling him he should wear the wig 3 times a week, which enrages him. Finally, everyone enjoys the cherry pie that the boys prepared as a family. Later, the triplets go to visit their mother's grave, although Eiji believes that his real mother is not there. And then he promises his brothers that if he dies and manages to see Metri, he will tell her that his life was pathetic, though happy. The scene changes, and Dali says goodbye to his parents because he is about to travel to study. Yuko doesn't want to accept that her son is leaving alone, and so Osamu has to stop her. He later tells his son that he will always be waiting for him at home. After saying goodbye to Daly, those present at the place ask Migi if he is sure he doesn't want to accompany him. But he says that they now have different paths, and that it will also serve to show that their hearts will always be united.